Welcome to Read and Learn English. Today we are going to explore the incredible story of Steve Jobs, the man who changed the world. He started as a curious boy in a small home in California. He was adopted, ordinary, and had no money or special advantages. Yet, his imagination, passion, and courage made him one of the most influential people in history. From building a computer in a garage to creating Apple, Pixar, iPhone, iPad, and more, his life is full of lessons for everyone who wants to dream big. Did you know that the first Apple computer was sold from a garage? Or that Steve Jobs was once fired from his own company, only to return and transform it completely? His journey was full of struggles, failures, and surprises. He faced illness, challenges, and moments when everything seemed lost. But he never gave up. He believed in his ideas, and his ideas changed the world. In this video, you will learn how small beginnings can lead to massive success, how failure can become opportunity, and how vision, courage, and creativity can inspire millions. This is not just a story about technology, it is a story about life, passion, and determination. By following Steve Jobs' journey, you can practice English, learn important life lessons, and feel motivated to create your own path. Get ready to discover the secrets behind Apple's success, the challenges Steve faced, and the lessons that can help you dream bigger and achieve more. Let's dive into the life of Steve Jobs and see how one person can truly change the world. A boy with a dream. Steve Jobs was born in California in 1955. His life did not begin with fame or wealth. His real parents were not able to raise him, so he was given up for adoption. A young couple, Paul and Clara Jobs, decided to care for him. They were kind and hard-working people, but they were not rich. They lived a simple life in a modest house. This is where Steve's story began, not in luxury, but in simplicity. As a child, Steve was curious. He liked to explore machines and ask questions. Radios, televisions, and small gadgets caught his attention. While many children played outside, Steve enjoyed taking things apart and looking at the pieces inside. He wanted to understand how they worked. At school, he was not always the best student. Teachers sometimes thought he was too restless and difficult. But Steve was searching for something bigger than the lessons in the classroom. Here is the first contrast in his story. On one side, Steve was an ordinary boy. He had no money, no special school, and no important family. On the other side, he had something powerful inside him: imagination. He dreamed of making things that could change people's lives. This small dream was like a spark. Most people could not see it, but in time that spark would grow into a fire that touched the whole world. During high school, Steve met another boy, Steve Wozniak. Wozniak loved electronics, too. They quickly became friends. Together, they spent hours building small projects and sharing ideas. Their friendship was important because it showed Steve the power of working with others. Alone, he was smart. With Wozniak, he became stronger. This is a lesson for us, too. Dreams grow bigger when we share them with the right people. Steve Jobs did not just accept the world as it was. He looked at machines and thought, how can this be better? How can this be simpler? How can this be beautiful? This way of thinking made him unique. Many people only saw what already existed. Steve imagined what could exist. This part of his story teaches us something important. You do not need a rich beginning to do great things. You do not need to be perfect in school to have a future. What you need is curiosity, courage, and a dream. Steve had all three. The life of Steve Jobs shows us that small beginnings can lead to great journeys. A boy from an ordinary home carried an extraordinary vision inside him. His story reminds us that greatness often grows in unexpected places. From this start, Steve would soon step into a garage with Wozniak. That garage would become the first home of Apple, and a new chapter of history would begin. A garage becomes a workshop. In the mid-1970s, Steve Jobs and his friend Steve Wozniak began working on an idea. They wanted to build a new kind of computer. At that time, computers were big, heavy, and difficult to use. Only large companies and universities could afford them. Ordinary people could not imagine having one at home. This was the problem Steve and Wozniak wanted to solve. They dreamed of making a small, friendly computer that anyone could use. But there was a challenge. They had no office, no factory, and no money. All they had was a dream, some parts, and a small space to work. That space was Steve's parents' garage. It was not clean or special. It had concrete floors, tools on the wall, and boxes everywhere. Yet in that simple place, history was about to begin. Here we see the contrast. On one side, there was an ordinary garage, nothing more than a storage room. On the other side, there was vision, energy, and imagination. For most people, a garage is only for cars or bicycles. For Steve and Wozniak, it became a workshop of dreams. This shows us that it does not matter where you start. What matters is how big your vision is. The two friends worked long hours. Wozniak focused on the technical side. He was a genius with electronics, creating small and powerful circuits. Jobs thought about design and how the computer should look. He wanted it to be simple, easy, and beautiful. Together, they built the first Apple computer, the Apple I. At first, it was only a wooden box with a keyboard and a screen connection, but it was a beginning, and it was different from everything else at the time. They sold the Apple I to small computer clubs and hobbyists. The response was surprising. People were excited. They saw that technology could now belong to everyone, not just to big companies. Each sale gave Steve and Wozniak more courage. Each small success gave them more belief. They were no longer just two boys in a garage. They were becoming something bigger. The story of the garage is a powerful lesson. You do not need the best office, the biggest budget, or the perfect plan to start. What you need is passion, focus, and the courage to begin. Great things can rise from small places. An old garage can become the birthplace of a revolution. From these humble beginnings, the idea of Apple was born. The garage became more than four walls and a roof. It became a symbol of creativity and possibility. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were ready to take the next step. What started as wires and wooden boxes in a garage was about to grow into a real company that would change the future of technology. The birth of Apple. The garage was only the beginning. In 1976, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and another partner officially started a company. They called it Apple. The name was simple, friendly, and easy to remember. It was different from other technology companies, which often had long, complicated names. Apple sounded warm, human, and natural. It showed the world that computers did not need to be cold machines. They could be fun and personal. Before Apple, computers were large, heavy, and difficult to use. They were gray boxes full of buttons and lights. Ordinary people felt afraid of them. They belonged in offices and laboratories, not in homes. But after Apple, things began to change. Apple computers were smaller, easier, and more exciting. They invited people to explore, to play, and to create. This contrast made Apple stand out. The first big step came with the Apple II. Unlike the Apple I, it was not just a wooden box. It looked modern, colorful, and friendly. It was ready for homes and schools. For the first time, families could own a computer and feel comfortable using it. Children could learn, parents could work, and games could be played, all on one simple machine. This was new, and people loved it. Sales grew quickly. Apple became known not only in California but across the country. The company moved from a garage to real offices. Investors gave money, and employees joined the team. Steve Jobs, once just a young dreamer, was now a business leader. Apple was no longer just an idea. It was a rising company with a powerful future. The growth of Apple brought excitement. Newspapers and magazines wrote about the two young men who had changed technology. People admired their courage to dream. Schools began buying Apple computers, and students discovered a new way of learning. Step by step, Apple was building a community, not just a product. But the heart of the story is this: one idea can change the world. At first, there were doubts. Some thought nobody needed a computer at home. Some thought the idea was too small. But Apple proved them wrong. A dream from a garage was now touching lives everywhere. Still, success is never simple. With growth came pressure. New competitors appeared. Inside Apple, strong opinions sometimes clashed. Steve Jobs had high expectations, and not everyone agreed with his style. As the company grew bigger, challenges became greater. The boy with a dream had created something powerful, but soon he would learn that success also brings new problems. The birth of Apple showed us that vision can turn into reality. From big, boring machines to small, exciting ones, the world of technology had changed forever. But as Apple moved into the spotlight, the story was far from easy. Ahead lay moments of pain, loss, and lessons that would shape the future of both the company and Steve Jobs himself. The fall and the pain. Apple was growing fast. Steve Jobs was young, famous, and rich. He was on magazine covers. People called him a genius. At only 30 years old, he had built one of the most successful companies in the world. It looked like everything was perfect. But behind the success, problems were rising. Inside Apple, not everyone agreed with Steve. He had strong ideas and big dreams. He wanted products to be simple and beautiful. He demanded hard work and perfection. Some people admired this. Others found it difficult. Tension grew between Steve and the company's leaders. They wanted stability and profit. Steve wanted innovation and risk. The two sides could not walk together. In 1985, something shocking happened. Steve Jobs, the man who had started Apple in his garage, was pushed out of the company. He was fired from his own creation. One day, he was the leader. The next day, he had no power at all. This was a painful fall. Here is the contrast. Before, Steve had fame, money, and influence. After, he felt lost, broken, and alone. Imagine creating something with your own hands and then being told you cannot touch it anymore. That was Steve's reality. He later said it was devastating. His life's work was taken away, and he had no clear path forward. For many people, this kind of failure would be the end. They would give up and disappear. Steve could have done the same. He had enough money to live comfortably forever. He could have walked away and never returned, but deep inside, he still had the same spark from his childhood. Failure had hurt him, but it had not killed his dream. During this time, Steve felt the pain deeply. He described it as being rejected by something he loved. The world no longer saw him as a hero. The same media that once praised him now doubted him. It was a dark season of his life. But sometimes, darkness teaches us more than light. Pain can become a teacher. This part of Steve's journey shows us an important lesson. Success can disappear, but failure is not the end. Life will knock us down, sometimes in ways we do not expect. What matters is what we do next. Will we stay down, or will we rise again? Steve's story did not stop here. In fact, this painful fall became the seed of a new chapter. Losing Apple gave him time to think, to explore, and to start again. He did not yet know it, but his greatest comeback was still ahead. From fame to rejection, from power to emptiness, Steve Jobs experienced one of the hardest trials of his life. Yet this was not the end of his story. Out of the pain, new learning and new growth would soon begin. Learning from failure. After leaving Apple, Steve Jobs felt broken. The world saw him as a man who had failed. He had lost his company, his position, and his power. For a time, he was lost in sadness. But slowly, he began to see the truth. Being fired from Apple was painful, but it also gave him something he had forgotten: freedom. He was no longer trapped by the expectations of a big company. He was free to dream again. This freedom led him to start a new company called NEXT. The idea was bold. Next would build powerful computers for universities and businesses. At first, many people doubted him. They thought his best days were over. But Steve kept working. He focused on design and technology. The next computer was advanced, even beautiful, though it did not sell in large numbers. On the surface, it looked like another failure. Yet hidden inside Next was technology that would later change the future. At the same time, Steve made another decision. He bought a small animation studio called Pixar. It was not famous then. Few people believed in it. But Steve saw something special. He believed computers could tell stories in a new way. For years, Pixar worked quietly, slowly building new animation tools. Many people laughed at the idea of computer cartoons, but Steve kept his faith. Then came the breakthrough. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the first full-length computer-animated movie. It was a huge success. Families everywhere loved it. Suddenly, Steve was not the man who had failed. He was the man who had created a new future for storytelling. Pixar proved that failure can open doors to unexpected success. Here we see the contrast. Before, Steve was rejected, humiliated, and called a failure. After, he had new companies, new ideas, and new victories. What looked like the end was actually a beginning. Pain became possibility. Rejection became redirection. This chapter of his life teaches us something important. Failure is not always a wall. Sometimes it is a door. When one path closes, another opens. If Steve had never been fired from Apple, he might never have built Next or bought Pixar. He might never have discovered the lessons that made him stronger. Through Next and Pixar, Steve grew wiser. He learned patience. He learned to listen more carefully. He learned that creativity is not only about ideas, but also about people. These lessons prepared him for something greater. The man who had once lost everything was slowly building the strength to return. Steve Jobs was no longer just a boy with a dream. He was a man who had fallen and risen again. His failures had taught him resilience. His new successes showed that even after the darkest night, the sun can rise, and soon, that sun would shine again on Apple. Return of the visionary. After years of learning and growing, Steve Jobs was ready to return to Apple. The company he had created in a garage was no longer the same. In the early 1990s, Apple struggled. Its products were confusing, sales were falling, and people began to lose hope. The company that once inspired excitement now felt weak and lost. Investors worried. Employees felt frustrated. Customers looked at other brands. Apple needed a change, and no one could provide it. Then, in 1997, Steve Jobs came back. He returned not as the boy in a garage, but as a man with experience, wisdom, and vision. The moment he stepped into Apple's offices, energy changed. People remembered his ideas, his passion, and his courage. Steve began making bold decisions. He simplified the product lines, focused on design, and set clear goals. Slowly, hope returned to the company. The contrast was clear. Before Steve returned, Apple was weak, slow, and almost invisible in the market. After he came back, Apple became alive. Ideas flowed. People felt inspired. The company's culture shifted. Workers, once afraid of making mistakes, began to dream again. Steve reminded everyone that Apple was not only about money, it was about creating products that people loved. One of the first big projects after his return was the iMac. Steve wanted it to be beautiful and simple. He wanted people to feel excitement when they saw it, and he succeeded. The iMac was colorful, stylish, and easy to use. Customers loved it. It was proof that vision and courage could bring life back to a company. The world noticed. Apple was no longer just a struggling company. It was a symbol of creativity and innovation. Steve's return teaches us something important. No matter how far you fall, you can rise again. Failure, struggle, and even rejection do not define your future. What matters is the courage to face challenges and the vision to see what could be. Steve Jobs returned stronger, smarter, and ready to create again. This story also shows the power of belief. Steve believed in himself and in the potential of Apple. Employees, investors, and customers slowly began to believe again. When one person has a clear vision and takes action, it can inspire thousands of others. Steve's energy and focus transformed the company and changed the technology world forever. The hero had come home. Apple had a new heart, and Steve had a new purpose. The journey was far from over. Now, with Apple alive and hope restored, Steve was ready to show the world what was possible. His next steps would not only change computers but also music, phones, and the way people live. The story of the visionary's return reminds us that with courage, focus, and belief, we can rise again from any setback. The iRevolution. After returning to Apple, Steve Jobs began a new mission. He wanted technology to be simple, beautiful, and powerful. He did not want people to feel afraid of computers or confused by machines. He wanted products that everyone could use and enjoy. This was the beginning of what people now call the iRevolution, a series of innovations that would change the world. Before Steve's new products, life with technology was often difficult. Computers were slow, complicated, and boring. Music players were heavy and limited. Phones could make calls, but they could not do much else. People felt frustrated. They wanted better, but they did not know what was possible. Steve imagined a world where technology could be friendly, exciting, and useful for everyone. The iMac was the first step. It was colorful, simple, and easy to use. People could turn it on and start working or playing right away. It was not just a machine, it was an experience. Families could explore the internet, students could create projects, and artists could design freely. The iMac showed that technology could bring joy instead of stress. Next came the iPod. Music became small, light, and portable. Before, people carried big CDs or tapes. Music was heavy and hard to organize. With the iPod, people could carry thousands of songs in their pocket. Suddenly, music was everywhere, on the bus, in the park, or at home. People smiled, danced, and discovered new songs. This small device changed the way people lived with music. Then came the iPhone. Phones were only for calling. They were simple tools with small screens. Steve imagined a device that could do much more: call, text, take pictures, play music, and even connect to the internet. When the iPhone arrived, people felt amazed. Life became easier and more creative. Suddenly, information, communication, and entertainment were all in one hand. Finally, the iPad brought computers, books, movies, and games together. Students could read textbooks, artists could draw, and families could watch movies. The iPad showed that technology could be simple, light, and beautiful. People's lives were changing step by step with each new product. Here we see the contrast. Before Apple's new products, technology was heavy, complicated, and sometimes frustrating. After Steve's innovations, technology became friendly, joyful, and inspiring. Ordinary people could now use powerful tools to create, learn, and connect. Steve Jobs did not just build devices, he built experiences that touched lives emotionally. The iRevolution teaches us an important lesson. Great ideas do not only solve problems, they inspire dreams. Steve's vision helped people think differently, create differently, and imagine differently. His work showed that technology can be a tool for joy, connection, and freedom. Through the iMac, iPod, iPhone, and iPad, Steve Jobs transformed technology and inspired millions. But this is not only a story about machines. It is a story about courage, vision, and the power of dreaming big. His journey reminds us that our ideas, no matter how small, can change the world. Lessons from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs' life teaches us many lessons. His story is not only about computers, phones, or movies. It is about how a person can live with purpose and courage. One important lesson is to follow your passion. Steve did not build Apple just to make money. He wanted to create products that inspired people. From a young boy in a garage to a global leader, he always followed what he loved. Another lesson is to stay hungry. Steve never stopped learning. Even when he was famous and rich, he looked for new ideas. He explored animation with Pixar. He worked on new computers, phones, and tablets. He always wanted to do more. He never felt satisfied with just success. This hunger helped him create the iRevolution. Steve also taught us to think differently. He asked questions that others did not ask. He imagined possibilities that seemed impossible. While other people accepted computers as they were, he thought, how can this be better? How can it be simple and beautiful? Small choices, like changing a button or a color, made big differences. These decisions shaped his destiny and the destiny of Apple. Another lesson is never to give up. Steve experienced failure many times. He was fired from Apple. Many investors doubted him. People laughed at his ideas. Yet he continued. He learned from mistakes, adapted, and tried again. Failure did not stop him. Instead, it became a stepping stone for bigger success. Here we see the contrast. Living without purpose can feel empty. People may work hard but feel lost, like machines in a factory. Living with vision, like Steve, gives energy and meaning. Each choice matters. Each effort shapes the future. Ordinary people can make extraordinary changes when they act with purpose and courage. Steve also showed the importance of focus. He focused on what mattered most. He said no to many ideas that distracted him. By saying no to less important things, he could say yes to great things. This is a lesson for everyone. We cannot do everything, but we can do important things well. Another story from Steve's life is about simplicity. He believed that simplicity is powerful. Computers, phones, and even business decisions were simpler when he focused on what truly mattered. Simplicity made his products accessible and loved by millions. These lessons are not just for business or technology. They are for life. Follow your passion. Stay hungry. Think different. Never give up. Focus on what matters. Small choices today can shape your tomorrow. Soon, Steve faced another challenge, his health. He became sick, and life reminded him that time is limited. The lessons he shared now became even more powerful. They show us not only how to succeed, but also how to value every moment. Facing mortality. In 2003, Steve Jobs faced a challenge no one can avoid. He became seriously sick. He was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer. Suddenly, the man who had changed the world felt fragile and small. For the first time, he had to face his own limits. This was not a problem he could solve with a computer, a design, or a team. It was personal and real. Fear came naturally. Many people, when they hear the word death, feel afraid. They worry about pain, loss, and leaving behind their work. Steve felt this too. He understood that time is limited and that life can end unexpectedly. But instead of giving up, he decided to reflect on what truly mattered. He wanted to live fully, even with uncertainty. Steve often spoke about life and death in public talks. One famous speech said, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart." These words were simple, yet they were powerful. They reminded people to focus on passion, love, and purpose. Here we see the contrast. On one side there is fear, fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of unfinished dreams. On the other side, there is courage, courage to live fully, courage to create, courage to love, and courage to inspire. Steve chose courage. He continued to work, to think, and to push boundaries. He did not waste time on regrets or fear. He focused on what mattered most. During this time, Steve reflected on his life. He remembered the garage, the failures, and the successes. He thought about Apple, Pixar, the iMac, the iPod, and the iPhone. He saw how his choices shaped the world. He realized that life is short and each day is precious. Small decisions, small risks, and small acts of courage can change everything. His story teaches us that mortality is a teacher. It reminds us to live with purpose and urgency. We cannot control the end, but we can control how we live each moment. Fear may come, but courage allows us to create meaning, help others, and leave a positive mark on the world. Even in sickness, Steve inspired millions. He showed that limitations do not prevent impact. His courage, vision, and honesty about life and death encouraged people to think deeply about their own choices. Ordinary people could apply his lessons, focus on passion, embrace challenges, and live fully today. Facing mortality also prepares the stage for his lasting legacy. What Steve created and the lessons he shared would continue to inspire millions, even after he passed away. His life reminds us that time is precious, and it should never be wasted. The next chapter is about how Steve Jobs' vision lives on and continues to change the world. The legacy lives on. In 2011, the world lost Steve Jobs. He passed away after a long battle with illness. People around the world mourned. They remembered the man who had changed technology, music, movies, and communication. His life had ended, but his ideas, vision, and courage continued to live. This is the power of a true legacy. Here is the contrast. One man's life may end, but his vision can live forever. Steve's ideas were not only about products, they were about seeing the world differently. He believed in simplicity, creativity, and following your heart. He believed that one person's dream could change the lives of millions. And he proved it. Even after his death, his story continues to inspire people everywhere. Apple continued to grow. Products like the iPhone, iPad, and MacBook kept changing lives. Pixar movies delighted children and adults alike. But beyond the products, Steve's lessons touched hearts. He taught us to stay hungry, think differently, and never give up. People remember not only what he made, but how he lived. His courage to follow his passion encourages others to do the same. Millions of learners and dreamers look at Steve's life and feel hope. He started as an ordinary boy, adopted and curious, working in a small garage. He faced failure, rejection, and illness. Yet he never stopped dreaming. He turned pain into opportunity, mistakes into lessons, and ideas into reality. This story shows that success is not only about talent, it is about determination, vision, and the courage to keep moving forward. Every person can take a lesson from Steve Jobs. You do not need to be famous, rich, or perfect. You do not need to start with advantages. What matters is your curiosity, your effort, and your willingness to learn. Small steps, small decisions, and small dreams can grow into something extraordinary. Every learner can think different and change their life, just as Steve did. Steve's story is also a reminder about time. Life is short. We do not know what tomorrow will bring. That is why it is important to act now, follow your dreams, and make every moment count. Fear may appear, but courage and passion can guide us. Just like Steve, we can face challenges, take risks, and create a lasting impact. The life of Steve Jobs is a journey of inspiration. From a curious boy in a garage to a man who changed the world, he showed what is possible when vision meets action. His legacy is not only in technology, but in courage, creativity, and hope. It teaches us that even ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Steve Jobs' story ends with a hopeful message. No matter where you are, no matter what challenges you face, you can dream, create, and inspire. You can think differently. You can take small steps today that may change your tomorrow. His life reminds us all to live fully, act bravely, and leave a positive mark on the world. Now, we have reached the end of Steve Jobs' story. His life reminds us that greatness can come from humble beginnings. From a curious boy in a garage to a visionary who changed technology, music, and movies, Steve showed us that imagination and courage can overcome any obstacle. He faced failure, rejection, and illness, but he never let these stop him. Instead, he learned, adapted, and created something extraordinary. Steve's story teaches us important lessons. Follow your passion, stay hungry, think differently, never give up. Life is short, and every moment is valuable. His journey shows that even ordinary people can leave an extraordinary impact when they act with purpose and courage. His legacy continues to inspire millions of learners, creators, and dreamers around the world. As you practice English and hear this story, remember that every small step counts. Small ideas can grow into life-changing achievements. Challenges can teach lessons. Failures can open doors. And dreams, no matter how big, can become real with effort and vision. Take Steve Jobs' journey as a guide. Use it to dream, to create, and to inspire yourself and others. You can think differently, take bold steps, and make your own mark on the world. Your story is waiting to begin, and the lessons of Steve Jobs can help you start today. Remember, the power to change your life is in your hands. Dream, act, and never stop learning. Your journey starts now.